So this lesson is about the concept or the topic of a midpoint. Now you've already worked with midpoints a little bit. The midpoints you've worked with have been just basically a segment drawn on the paper with a midpoint in the middle and the two pieces that are equal to each other. And what we've done with these is use the fact that these two pieces are equal to help us solve problems about this segment. So we've been able to figure out how long it is, how long one piece of it is, all based on the idea that this piece is the same as this piece. So that is the kind of midpoint we're working with, but what we're going to do is work with them in the coordinate plane, which means that's on an XY axis. If you have graph paper, this would be a good time to use graph paper. If you don't have any graph paper, don't worry. It's not gonna count against you or hurt you that you don't have it. You may be somebody that really likes to have nice, neat graphs. So if you have some graph paper, you may want to pause and go get it. If you don't have some, I would recommend using something straight to make your lines nice and straight here today. So on my XY axis here, I'll go ahead and label it. So this will be my x-axis. This will be my y-axis. And on my coordinate plane, I'm going to put a point. So right here, I'm going to put point A, and it's located at 2, 2. I'm going to put another point, point B, and it's going to be located at 6, 4. So that's going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4. So here's point B. Point B is at 6, 4. I'm going to connect those 2 points, creating a line segment. So from point A to point B, I've created line segment AB. Now, once you've done this, if you need to pause it and catch up, go ahead and do that. But once you've done, I want you to look at the line segment we've created. Look at line segment AB and see if you can determine where the midpoint is located. So if you need to pause it to do that, go ahead. All right, the midpoint is located right here. And this point is 4, 3. Now, how did I know that was the midpoint? Well, it was pretty obvious, right? I have my segment here, and I see this perfect little intersection of grid lines that's right in the center of my segment. So it was very easy for me to locate that. Now, I want to get you to think about this a little. So I'm going to rewrite my points over here. I'm going to write point A is 2, 2. Skip a little space and write point B under it. 6, 4. And in the middle, I'm going to write my midpoint that I found, which was 4, 3. I'm going to also show you a little bit of notation that you might be familiar with or you might not be. But every point that we use in a coordinate plane has an x-coordinate and a y-coordinate. So if we wanted to talk about just point A, we could say that x is 2 and y is 2. But if we start talking about point B also, well, I can't say that x is always 2, right? Because point B, x is 6. I can't say that y is always 2 because with point B, y is 4. So we have a way that we differentiate between these 2 points. And that's with these little underscore or subscript numbers. So this is the first point I started with. So this will be x1 and y1. This is the second point I used. So this will be x2 and y2. It's just a little bit of notation, but it helps keep things straight. And in a minute, you'll see why we want to be able to keep all this organized. So go ahead and pause right now. See if you can come up with a pattern or a method or a formula or basically any way you can understand how we got this point, 4, 3, just based on point A and point B. Forget about the picture, and let's pretend it's not there. How could you come up with that as the midpoint? So pause it and think about it now. All right, now that you've thought about it, you've got a good idea, we're going to test your idea. So I'm going to put another point on here, and that point is going to be -5, 3. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3. This will be point C. point D is going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 4, negative 4. So point C, negative 5, 3. Point D, 4, negative 4. Now, I'm going to connect those with a segment as well. So from point C to point D, and you should be using a straight edge to do this. This isn't, the time for doing freehand graphs is long gone. Everything you do in this class should be done with a nice straight edge, or otherwise your pictures will betray you. So here's our segment, this green segment here, segment CD. I want you to take a look at it and see if you can identify where the midpoint is. Okay, so I'm looking at it and I don't think it's right here because that's too close to D. And I don't think it's over here because it's too close to C. But I don't really know what values are in here because it's not on any of my intersections like I'd like it to be. So the best I'm going to be able to do is say, I think that midpoint is somewhere in here, right? So I want to write down your new points. C is negative 5, 3, and D is 4, negative 4. And let's keep in mind that our C has an X value and a Y value, and our D has an X value, oops, that should be a 2, an X value and a Y value. You try to come up with the midpoint. So go ahead and use whatever formula, pattern, or idea you came up with for this and apply it to these points. Pause it and do that now. So hopefully you came up with a point, and the point you hopefully came up with is negative 1/2, negative 1/2. Maybe you put negative 0.5, negative 0.5. Okay, and that point, if we look on a graph, is 1/2 and 1/2. So that looks like it might be right. But I'm still not super confident. So we're going to use something called the midpoint formula. And the midpoint formula uses the same method that you probably used to find this point, the same method that you probably figured out to confirm that you had this point right. The midpoint formula starts with an M, and that's because the midpoint is point M. So this is point M right here. Has a parentheses because all points have parentheses around them. And then the X term of the midpoint is always x1 plus x2 divided by 2, then a comma. The Y term is always y1 plus y2 divided by 2. So we just take our points, and I'm going to go ahead and use C and D and just double check, verify this formula works. So our midpoint is negative 5 plus 4 divided by 2, and then it's 3 plus negative 4 divided by 2. Okay, so scroll down a little bit. Negative 5 plus 4 is negative 1 divided by 2. 3 plus negative 4 is also negative 1 divided by 2. There is our midpoint. So that's what we're going to be doing in class. Hopefully you're able to follow along. If you have any questions, write them down and bring them with you tomorrow.